Thank you, everyone, for joining. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Dr. Bernice Ledbetter. I serve as Dean of Students and Alumni Affairs. I also serve as the Director for the Center for Women in Leadership here at the Graziadio Business School. I'm so pleased to welcome our guest speaker today to our Executive Speaker Series. Liz Musch is a very, very accomplished executive and has so much rich experience to share with us today. I would like to take a few moments to share with you just how extensive Liz's executive experience is. So if you will allow me, I'd love to share with you about her background as a way of introduction, and then we'll get right into the questions. Liz is a very accomplished CEO. She has over 25 years of experience leading professional services companies. She's also lived on 3 continents and worked extensively in 6. She has a history of advancing top companies in terms of optimizing their growth and stakeholder value across markets, channels, obviously geographies, and business conditions. So she's a wonderful speaker for us to spend some time with today because of that. She has also been involved in transformation, both people and technology. She's participated in multiple successful mergers and acquisitions, and she's superb at leveraging her professional experience as a subject matter expert in the area of finance and also board experience. And she's contributed to the growth boards, particularly in the governance of those organizations. As a CEO and a multinational professional, Liz has a lot of experience in the area of marketing services, and she's given her brought her extensive credentials also to the area of strategy, branding, advertising and communications, digital. I just made up a word, digital. That's media and digital. Digital. I just made up a new word. I love that. It's a new category, digital. Liz also worked in customer service and the customer experience and data analytics. It just goes on and on and on. You can see just how grand and deep and wide her experience is. And Liz has also led several large-scale companies, including 4 that were publicly listed through periods of digital transformation and international expansion and managing complicated relationships and complex, diverse challenges, AKA a time in the past that's very much like the time right now. Liz and I first met through Liz's affiliation with an organization called C200. It's a group of extraordinary C-level women executives that the Center for Women in Leadership has partnered with to host a conference every other year. And it was just back in February, though it seems like a long time ago now, that we hosted a conference, and that's when I first met Liz. And I knew that she would be fabulous for this Executive Speaker Series. So Liz, welcome to the Graziadio School. Thank you for being here. And I'd like to jump into our questions. So Liz, obviously you have such a rich and wonderful professional background. I wonder if you could walk us through your career journey. And I think it would be especially interesting to this audience if along that path you could share with us maybe like 3 of your key learnings along that path. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bernice. I'm delighted to be here. Hello, everyone. Sorry I can't see your beautiful faces, but I'm happy to be here on a beautiful day in Southern California, right? We're all very lucky. Look, I am old, and that's why I have such an extensive career experience. I don't know that I want to take you through the entire freaking journey. Excuse my French, but what I have thought about maybe is a way of telling you about some of the important moments in my life and sort of what I guess maybe the implications are. So hopefully it will be a little bit of help to you. I've been very lucky. Look, I've loved my career. I loved the different roles I had. I was constantly learning. I was constantly discovering, and I wish that for all of you. So the first thing maybe that I wanted to talk about was the idea that especially when you're young or when you're at the beginning of your career, be open to things that you like. Allow yourself to be drawn to people maybe that aren't exactly doing what you wanted, to be doing, but let yourself and your instincts respond to things so that you're actually going towards things that you have an affinity with. opportunities come up. Not all of them are terrific, but opportunities come up and you need to be nimble. You know, if you stick to this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it, you're going to miss out. So my first point is really, you know, be open. I actually did all of my studies in political, international politics, security studies. I wanted to be a diplomat. My dream at the time was to be Henrietta Kissinger. And guess what? I didn't, first of all, because I don't think I have the personality to be a diplomat, but also because stuff happens, life happens. And I was very lucky to meet people and to get opportunities to do things that I wouldn't have done had I stuck to, oh my God, I absolutely have to stay with foreign service or what have you. So that was the first idea. The second is really, and I mentioned it already, is about learning. Never stop learning. I think that point all by itself is in large part responsible for the fact that I've had decent success. You know, never stop learning means even when you're senior and experienced, you got to stay open. You learn from everybody. You can learn from somebody who's young. You can learn from somebody who has a completely different mindset and a completely different experience set. But, you know, it's by staying open that you can explore and you challenge yourself. Obviously, in this crazy world of ours, you have to stay up to speed. So that's a given. I don't even want to go on that. But I would say stay humble. Understand that you never get it all. You never understand it all. It's constantly moving, and you want to stay ahead of it. And the other thing is that you can exploit it. I mean, I got into the habit, and people who worked with me got into the habit of sending little love notes. Did you see this? Did you see that article? Did you know this? Did you ever think about doing this in your company? Learning gives you an opportunity to be smarter, to have more ideas, to be more open, to apply them to more things. So learning, big on that. There are times, obviously, when you need to be, I don't want to say stubborn, but when you need to be clear, and you have to have focus. And that is when you want to make a change. So I don't know whether that's the situation for you guys today. I know many of you have already had lots of job experience, work experience behind you. But for instance, my first career was advertising. Started in New York. I had 20 years in advertising, ended up as the CEO of the company, and I wanted out. And I really thought that advertising had seen its best days, and I wanted to pivot to something that was going to be important in the future. And no one would help me because, and starting with headhunters, they would all look at me and say, yeah, a successful advertising person. Yeah, I have this great ad agency for you. And I think what I was able to do at that time is have the clarity and focus. What am I going to do? I did my own analysis. I said, okay, if no one's going to help me, I have to figure out where do I want to go? What's going to be important in the future, as I said, and then target it so that I am successful and able to get into that. And what I thought at the time, and I just share this hoping that it's of interest, I'd always worked in marketing, obviously, but I had seen that the importance of research and data analytics was increasing. And so I basically thought, okay, you know what, that's new. It's linked to technology because if you have a platform, you can really go quicker, automate a lot of things. That's where I want to go. I had no credentials in research. So what I did was I crossed advertising where I had credentials and research. And I wrote to the CEO of the top global advertising and branding research company in the world, Millward Brown. And I got a job and I pivoted. So clarity, focus, especially when you need to make a change. And don't expect the world to make that change for you. You have to do the research. You have to make the change. More recently, I wanted to start spending more time in Southern California, where I grew up here. I went to SC. So I did an analysis of, okay, who needs me in Southern California? Who's going to pay good money to have my ideas and my advice in Southern California? And that's how I found a company that I've been working with. And the last thing I would say is never get comfortable. Force yourself to change, force yourself to adapt. If you do, you'll always be fine. If you don't, and you lay back, you enjoy life, and you can, you might run into trouble because the world changes. So I think the idea of getting your body and your brain used to constantly stretching yourself is a good one. Raise your hand. Say that you're up for initiatives. Take on stuff that you would know nothing about. But it allows you to be more visible within the corporate world and allows you to grow. I don't know if that's helpful, Bernice. Is that in light of what you were asking for?
Absolutely, Liz. That's terrific. Thank you so much. So many pearls of wisdom to take note of and to remember the importance of humility, but be strong. I mean, it can seem like there's a lot of paradoxes, and there are. And understanding that you're not always going to get everything you want. That's a really important message because I think that we do have dreams and aspirations, and we're working towards those points on the horizon. But we may have to deviate just slightly to a different point on the horizon that may eventually get us to our ultimate goal, but it's not necessarily a straight line. You know, Liz, there's another thing that you've shared. I've heard you share it before, and I wonder if you would spend a moment helping us understand also the importance of being clear about the story that we tell in terms of our career, right? Because we're all telling a story. And so I wonder what your thoughts are on how we go about telling that clear story.
Yeah, I would push back just a little bit, Bernice. I think I think you have to have a story, but I don't think the story should always be the same. I think the story also depends. I mean, I come from advertising, so I think the story changes depending on who you're talking to and what your objectives are. What I do think is really important is clarity. I think you need to know who you are, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, what people appreciate you for, what you're not very good at, what you don't like doing, what people think you're paying for. I mean, I think you have to have clarity about yourself. And then again, if you're supple and you're flexible, you change your story, which obviously has to be genuine and has to be a good one, but you can slightly adapt it depending on who you're talking to. I don't know, but I do think being clear on what you want is always really important. Telling a story, if it's not based on what you actually want out of sharing that story, then it makes no sense. Telling a story just about what has happened to you makes no sense unless it is driving what you want to be doing and what you want from the person that you're speaking to. I'd say that.
Awesome. Absolutely. I love that. And I think really one of the pragmatic ways to sort of implement this idea that Liz is sharing is to think about when someone asks, where do you see yourself headed, or what are you looking for in a career or even in your next position? And you say, I'm open to, just about anything. That's really the wrong answer. Just to be blunt, that's the wrong answer. Liz is encouraging us to think about, okay, what's the story for or the answer to the question of what you want to do, where you see yourself headed, relative to the person you're talking to as well. So there has to be a lot of adaptability, a lot of flexibility, but that clarity gives other people the opportunity to support you in your quest. If you're ambiguous, then people can't come alongside you and be part of helping. They need clarity to get you to help get you to where you want to get to. So I love that. Thank you, Liz, so much. So now I want to talk about leading change. So Liz, you've obviously been in so many organizations that have gone through change, and that's all we're experiencing right now is organizational change, societal change, personal change. And so the capacity to lead change well and effectively becomes an incredibly important skill as a leader and also as a manager, I would add. And so Liz, I wonder if you could help us think about, how you approach leading change or some of the things you've learned along the way that maybe didn't work so well, that maybe were, lessons learned. But any thoughts you have about leading change will be very much appreciated. Thanks.
Well, yeah, I think it's all about the people. I think that if you have the right people with you, and by that I mean, they're good, they're smart, they're open, they're open to change, then you can be successful. If you have the right people and you give them clarity, I think, again, clarity of objectives. What are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do it? What's your role in this? What's my role in this? How do we get there? Very clear on objectives, and then empower those people to do what they're supposed to be doing, because you can't, as a leader, do everything. You need to be sharing the weight. You need to be sharing the pain as well. On the flip side, when you ask me what didn't work, I think that there were moments when when I should have been driving change, and I was too patient with some people. And I know this might sound really harsh, but I believe it. I think that I don't think we should be patient with people who resist change, or people who play games or play politics. I don't think it's, I have a long career. It has never been a sign of good things to come. So people who resist change, play games, play politics, it's toxic. It's going to ruin the environment. And in any environment, it's going to be toxic. But when you're trying to drive change, it's going to slow you down. Because those people are going to try to, talk to other people and slow them down and give them doubts and hesitations. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the first thing I would say that is really important if you're trying to drive change. The second is almost the other side of that, is I think you need to give up yourself. You need to be exemplary. You need to, and if you don't know at the beginning, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to figure out what you have to do. And again, give clarity to the others. But if you want to drive other people, you have to show the way. You have to be convincing. You have to give of yourself. You have to bring the expertise required, or bring the expertise in that needs to be made in order to the transformation. But I think I think driving transformation is something that has to be personal and passionate for the people that are involved. They're not going to do that and do it for you unless you give of yourself, unless they see that you care, you've got passion, you are going to get there, and therefore they want to get on the boat and do it with you.
That's amazing. Yes, that makes absolutely perfectly good sense. And I think you make a very good point, Liz, about how do we deal with toxicity in organizations. And oftentimes during change, times of rapid change, that toxicity comes to the surface and we begin to see it a little bit more clearly. And it strikes me that as leaders, we really have an opportunity, and I would actually say a responsibility, to ensure that toxicity isn't invading the organization's culture, and sometimes our long suffering and our, compassion and our willingness to, give the second, third, fifth, eighth chance leads to a detrimental outcome that we are responsible for. And so I really like your clarity and your decisiveness in talking about dealing with toxicity and how that can come up and change. I think that's really, really helpful and really powerful, and something for us to remember for a long, long, long time to come.
Because you're going to run into it, whether you do academic or you're going to run into it. It's because it's everywhere. It's human. People are not comfortable, so they're pushing back in one way or another. Another thought I had was, you mentioned global expansion at one point. I think that for global expansion, for those of you, and I hope many of you have that opportunity, or maybe you already have, to be involved with a business that is trying to expand overseas. The whole importance of creating relationships with your colleagues, with your key clients, and working really hard at those relationships. I don't think global expansion, or successful global expansion, is just about rational decisions that are either business or marketing. I think it has a lot more to do with relationships, allies that you're able to create, alliances, I should say, that you're able to create, and therefore bring on all the business and all the financial investments, etc. But have those relationships. If you don't have those relationships globally, you're going to find that when you leave the country, they're not going to do what you've asked them for. So I think in that specific example of global expansion, especially when you're trying to make change happen, I would focus on the relationships.
How's that? Are you able to hear me, Liz?
Yes.
Okay, maybe that's better right there.
Technology always.
So our students many of them will be graduating soon.
Right.
And because of that, there's some concerns in terms of where the economy is. What thoughts do you have on that?
It's a crazy world. I agree. It's tough. I know that it's difficult, and I by no means underestimate how difficult it must be for you guys. So you know, again, I let your instincts guide you. I think, like, for instance, in terms of studies, I've always said, study what you love, go to the subject matter that speaks to you, learn about what you love, follow what you love. Don't force yourself to study something or to get involved in something for job wise that you think is smart, that you think means you're going to have a job 5 years from now. I think in this world, those kinds of guarantees are kind of difficult to have anyway. So, and I think that if we're driven by ourselves and what we like and what we have an affinity for, I think it's more possible to then be fluid and then adapt when you do have to move and you have to have other opportunities. The other thing I would say is that I think that if in the early years you learn to seriously think, conceptualize, be a strong critical thinker, and push yourself on creativity, I think you'll be fine. I mean, learn to think, conceptualize, creativity, and critical thinking. You know, really looking at things and making decisions, saying that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. I think that will help you, and I think those things are more and more important given the world we have these days. The other thing I would say is diversity is something that you should seek, meaning between internships and jobs and everything else, try to be challenged with different problems, different issues, different challenges, different roles, different business conditions. The more that you have diverse situations that you see, that you live in, and that you have to respond to, the better you're going to end up being. The more adaptable you're going to be, the smarter, because you know the brain works in strange ways. You pick up stuff, you see things, and then you apply it to something else in the future. So diverse. Try to not do always the same thing. Go for different things. Work on different kinds of things, different kind of companies, different kind of challenge. Not everyone wants to be successful. Not everyone wants to be CEO. I have lots of friends from my high school days, even college, that didn't want to do that. So if you do, which I always knew that I wanted to lead and I wanted to get stuff done. I wanted to have an impact. If you want to have an impact, you got to work for it. I think you need to work harder than the pack. I think you have to be better than the rest of them. I mean, it sounds stupid, but I think you do. So going back to clarity, I think in this difficult environment, you guys have to individually figure out what's really important. Is it the job? Is it the career? Is it money? Is it personal time? Is it that I want to stay here because my honey lives here? You know, what are the things that are really important? And be very honest about them, but both in terms of constraints and desires. And then force yourself to really think, okay, so therefore, what should I be doing? What kind of company should I be looking for, etc. What else would I say? You got to be fast. You have to be fast, not just you know, online. You have to be fast. You have to be an 80-20 person. Forget about being a perfectionist. If it's almost there, if it's good enough, you got to run in business. The more you're able to do things and get out there, the more you're going to learn. Sometimes you'll fail. It doesn't matter. You just keep going because you're going to learn. The whole idea is to get stuff done, to create things, and to get other people to respond to that. I think it's very rare to have a really strong leader who's also a perfectionist. Doesn't mean that there are not major roles for perfectionists in all companies, but you got to be fast and you got to be decisive. And if you're not decisive, people are going to have a problem with your leadership because they're going to be like, look, we're wasting time. I made you this recommendation. It's obvious we ought to move. You need to make these investments, whatever it is. When that starts happening, those are not good signs. So force yourself to be decisive quickly. And it's okay that you make mistakes. And I guess the last thing, and again, I'm not underestimating at all what you guys are going through or the situation that you're facing, but be pragmatic. Take a job that isn't your dream job if you need to work, but get experience, make connections, never burn a bridge. You know, networking is unfortunately very, very, very important. We go back to relationships. Make relationships. Make, you know, and I know that women are not necessarily really good at this, but You need, at a time like this, you need to network, because chances are it's going to be somebody who knows you and who appreciates you for whatever reason that's going to think of you for an opportunity. I see a question in the chat that I wanted to talk about. If you're okay with that, Bernice, would you be okay? Because it said, what are some best practices for defining your focus when you may start off feeling very confused? How do you go from confused to clear and focused? So what I've done, I can't tell you countless times for myself and for others who I care about, is you force yourself to put some stuff on paper, like what do I want, what do I don't want, all that. You call upon 1, 2, 3 really close friends / colleagues who you trust, who are smart, who are pertinent, care about you, and you do a brainstorming session and you work the hell out of it. What does this mean? And if they're good, they're going to force you to answer questions. And little by little, you start having clarity on what is it that you want. Because until you have clarity, you can't put a plan together. Until you have clarity, you can't really start being efficient in finding what you want. So that helps me. That has helped me a lot. And I've done it, and I do it, and continue to do it for a lot of people. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, but especially when you're doubting yourself, call in some tough cookies and do a brainstorming with them.
An echo.
I think we're all getting your echo. I'm gonna look at the other question, if I may, just to advance things while you're trying to figure out your audio, Bernice. The second question that I see is related to the breadth of my global experience. What would I say are some of the key differences between the C-suite in Europe versus the US? Boy. I have, I have lived for the last more than 30 years in France. And although most of those years were spent working for American companies or British companies, or WPP, I ended up working for a French company as well. And working for European companies, and this is a bad generalization, but French companies are, it's all about relationships. But I mean, in my French company anyway, the CEO spent his time with the CFO. They had a child together. Stuff like that happens. That would never happen in the US. I think in terms of boards, I have been, I remember once I was selected to be on the board of one of the biggest dairy companies in France. And after I was selected, the chairman called me in and told me that I had to be really clear on the fact that my responsibility was this. It was not the company. It was not the stakeholders. It was not adding value. It was this very small little niche that was important to him. I mean, ridiculous. And obviously I said, okay, I'm not interested, and I left. I think things like that would not happen in the US. And I'm not saying that things are perfect in the US. I think there's a lot of things that still need to change. But I do think that morality in general, ethics in general, are still probably ahead of the game, certainly versus France. I think the UK is fine. I think Scandinavian countries, Germany are on the whole okay, but you have lots of, different issues. One of the issues we have in France and Germany, for instance, is the importance and the power of labor unions, and the fact that it's very hard to fire people. So you have to be, and again, I'm a tough cookie in terms of being a leader. You have to be very creative, and you have to do it with the government and with labor laws in order to make change happen. And I think that's something that you don't have in the US. I would argue that a little of that would not be so bad in the US, so that people are a little bit more protected. But I think that's a big difference as well. What else? The differences in the C-suite. I think old boys clubs, they exist everywhere. I think old white men are still in large part in power, and I hope no one here is insulted by my saying that. And younger white men as well, even though I see that in the US, they feel like they're underrepresented these days. I don't know, what else? I think governance is a moving is a moving object right now. I think there's a lot of work being done on governance. I think we're trying to really outline what you need in order for a company to be well governed. So I don't think it's perfect in the US either, but I think we're getting there. I don't know if that responds to Catherine, what your question was.
I think so. I think while Bernice is figuring out her connections, I'm going to be assisting with some Q&A.
Right.
Liz,
Great.
actually, I have a question for you, which is, I mean, you really shared a lot of valuable insights today. I was wondering, have you thought about writing a book? And it's just my personal question. Have you thought about putting together all that you've learned into a book for especially our female business executives and wannabe leaders? And if you do, I hope you do, and maybe you can put some thoughts together based on what you shared today. So I just wanted to know whether you thought about that, and if you do, when would you do it? When would you want to do
Yeah,
that?
no, I don't actually. I've thought about, writing a spy novel more than that. I am not no, I just haven't. What I do like giving back, and I like the personal touch. So I do a lot of mentoring and coaching, and obviously through that I give back sort of the advice that I have. I haven't thought about writing. There's so many how-to books out there. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like, who would want to read the book anyway? So I'm not working on it. Sorry about that.
I don't know. I think I'd want to read that book and maybe assign to our business school students right now. But Bernice, are you back online? I'm not sure, but let's see. I have another question here regarding career pivots.
Yes.
In terms of what you perceive as a company's perception on students or people who are changing industries, or I guess along with the other question is sort of the future of data and data analytics for businesses or as an education. How do you see the importance of those two different
Huge.
combining them?
Huge. But you have to know what you want. I mean, the majority of people that work in data analytics, and I can confirm that it's going to continue to be huge, are statisticians and modelers and quanties and, very specific kind of capabilities, techies, obviously. So you have to figure out what you want. I think as a field, it is growing, continuing to grow, and it's crossing with other fields, so obviously the beginning was data analytics with technology, but you now have a lot of it with consulting. You have a lot of it with, in very specific areas like, clean energy, or you can have it in, it's being crossed a lot. So I think, again, I think it's an interesting field. I welcome and I'm open to helping people make that pivot, but I think you have to think about, where do you see yourself? Because I would never have been a statistician or a modeler. I mean, I could never, I have no idea what I would be doing. And doing research, actually doing the research, I was never interested in that. So you have to know what you're interested in, and then go for it.
Mm-hmm. In terms of business school curriculum, if I may ask, coming from where I am, so I'm the associate dean here. I look at the curriculum all the time. What are some courses, maybe even non-traditional courses, that you see would be very helpful for our students and to get exposed to while they're in business schools? If you have you ever thought about that?
I haven't thought about it, but I will think about it now. I never went to business school. So I don't have that but I assume it's changed so much in the last 4 years. Do you do courses on sustainability, on climate,
Mm-hmm.
on gender studies, on conflict resolution? I think there are a lot of subjects out there that you need to be comfortable with these days, because a lot of it's going to come up all the time. And those are choices. So obviously I know you do digital marketing and all that other stuff. I assume you do data analytics as well. What else do I think in business is important? I think how would I say this? Looking at the capitalist system and understanding how it works and what doesn't work very well. I think if we can give students that are going to go into the business field a better understanding of, okay, how am I going to behave? What am I going to really try to do? Because this world is a mess right now. The environment's a mess. So the more you guys can go out there and make change happen, the better off we're going to be. So if you can pick up those tools, though, that thinking while you're at Pepperdine, that for me is ideal.
Wonderful.
I'm looking at Kathy Morris's question when you spoke about career pivots. Do our companies less willing to take chance on those that are changing industries? Again, what's your clarity? What's your story? In that case, what is your story? Why are you changing industries, and why is it interesting for that company? And what are you bringing? So you may not have that industry experience, but you do have this, that, and the other. That is what you're bringing, and you're interested in his industry. I don't think that's an issue.
Great. I don't know if you're aware, but we do have sustainability specific program here. So I'm glad we're doing that. We do have conflict resolution and negotiation courses along with Strauss at the law school. We don't have gender studies, but I think
you don't have gender studies. Come on,
not at the business school, but I think we do have Center for Women Leadership that Bernice is leading. Hopefully, will give us a way for us to learn it and discuss the rules going forward as well.
How about soft skills? Do you guys have courses in soft skills? Reading people, understanding how people are feeling, listening. People don't know how to listen, you know. I mean, I was told years ago, I thought it was a really good thing, and it really helped me because I'm a strong, independent woman. And once someone said to me, "You can't be listening if you're talking." Okay, sometimes very simple stuff that just comes through. But I think soft skills of learning to listen to other people, build on what they're saying, make them feel good, even if you're disagreeing, it's a really important skill.
So Bernice, I was wondering if your connection is back online.
I'm going to look at the questions while Bernice is hooking up, okay? I'm just looking from the bottom. Are women underrepresented in business analytics? Not really. There are a lot of women. There are a lot of women in data analytics, but it depends where. Behind the computer and doing all the techie stuff tends to be the guys, right? I think tech and science, well, you guys know this, STEM, that's our biggest problem. We need to get women into STEM. But data analytics, women like doing the research. They like doing the understanding. They like talking to people and figuring things out. So there are a lot of women in data analytics, but less so in actual data and tech. Does that make sense? I hear someone mention SEER, S-E-E-R. What is that?
Well, that's our sustainability program that we have.
Okay. Yep. Consider it a plug. Suggestions for people who worked for around 10 years and want to progress to higher level executive positions. Well, yeah. I mean, I'd need to know more, obviously, to understand exactly what the situation is. But again, if you get clarity on this is what I've done in the 10 years, but I don't want to do that anymore. And this is what I want to do. And figure out and lay out perhaps what have you done or what are you bringing to the party that makes you credible to be a leader and a future executive. And then, I know we don't like to do this, but you got to there are times when you got to sell yourself, or you have to make things evident to other people so that they understand as well. You have a certain amount of, talent, capabilities, etc., so that people think of you for executive positions. The other thing I would say is that if you want to be an executive, behave like an executive, which means be responsible, don't muck up, work like a dog, be exemplary.
Wonderful. Right.
Oh, Bernice, we can't hear you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so she can hear, but I can see you, Bernice, and you're muted, but it's 12:47, so we have sort of last few minutes. Liz, if you can kind of give us and our students sort of your final words, I guess, and
Are a lot of the students, women in the audience, men, is that?
yeah, we have a good mix, half.
Mhm.
So we have about 120 participants right now watching you. So final words of advice to our students as they prepare for I guess a new normal or a new world out there as we go
Yeah,
forward.
I know.
Mhm.
But even on Zoom, build your network, reach out to people. You never know. It can, sometimes the answer is no, or sometimes they don't answer you, but reach out to people who are of interest to you and who can help you. Try to build that network. Find mentors. Obviously, mentors, you want to have someone who sort of naturally wants to mentor you, who cares about you, but if that's not the case, find yourself some mentors. Find mentors within the company where you are who are as senior as possible, and they can be white male as well. But find yourself mentors who are prepared to talk about you and mention you and think about you for opportunities. Obviously, stand up for yourself. I mean, you got to take risks in a time like this more than ever. And God knows I didn't have that when I was starting my career. You have to take risks. You have to be prepared to move, and maybe it's more comfortable for you to live in city XYZ. Maybe you need to be mobile for 5 years in order to really give your career a kickstart. I think you have to be adaptable. You have to be open, and you got to take risks. The earlier, and not so much as making change happen and taking risk, you're teaching yourself to become a risk taker. You're teaching yourself to be comfortable with change. You're teaching yourself to constantly adapt. And I think if you're clear on what you want, but you're adapting because you have to and you have to work, then you're going to be fairly successful. But and think about, again, going back to what Bernice was talking about, you do have to have a story and you have to have clarity of story, but it's your story. You have to build it. It's not the same story that you mentioned to everyone. It has to be specific.
Wonderful.
Does that help, Abraham?
Yes, that's very helpful. And I think I'm speaking on behalf of Bernice and all of us together. We're so thankful for your time. Your comments, I think, were very, very insightful and helpful to our students. And we're so grateful that you took your time to speak with us. And this is a personal thing. I hope you write a book. And I hope you continue to mentor and encourage a lot of our students and young people along your path as well. So thank you so much for your time with us, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you and connecting with you.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to do more with you guys. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Abraham. Sorry, Bernice, you had trouble. Thank you to all who were patient enough to come in and hear me. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.